naturally.
We will just let it go. Guys, the universe has allowed us to be together in this place and has said that everything is working. And so we're just going to run with it. And today on the One Life podcast, we have Miss Julie Reisler, who is the author of Get a PhD in You. And I believe there is a new edition either coming out or it's already out. So I'm excited to talk about that and how she's been able to impact not only just women, but a wealth of people through her inspirational message. So Julie, thanks so much for spending some time with us today as well.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm so excited. I feel like I have one of those shit-eating grins. Like I'm just so happy to be here.
So we always start off these with kind of the why, and I'd love to share as much as you are obviously willing to share here in this conversation about why you're so passionate about helping people overcome their doubts, overcoming their insecurities, their fears. You help really people to kind of come into themselves, if you will. So, but I know you went on your own personal journey, and you didn't start out an author. You didn't start out on TED stages and speaking and coaching. So can you kind of catch us up on what happened and maybe some of the significant moments that led to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to note the time because this could be like a
full
day.
We have as long as you have. So.
All right. Well, and I'll make sure this is, digestible for people listening, but, no, and I think it's a great question, and it's important to talk about because, and I believe this has been my story, but for those listening, one of the ways to tap into what you feel lit up about and purposeful about often comes from places of breakdown, of despair, of struggle. That's actually one of the gifts, and it's something I love to teach because I've seen the transformation in my own life, and it certainly came out of a place of feeling not good enough and a lot of self-loathing. My story, for me, on the outside, I would say things looked pretty darn fine and good. I grew up in a nice area out of Boston, had really loving parents, sister. The inner crap, though, that I dealt with for me was really a struggle, and so much so I talk very openly about my relationship with food, with my body, with myself was not great. And many a time, I just wanted to peace out and not be here anymore. I mean, it was really kind of that level. And I think a lot of people don't realize, food, we eat it all the time, 3 meals a day for many of us. And maybe if you're intermittent fasting, it's 2 times a day, but typically at some point in the day, you're going to eat. And I really use food to deal with emotions that I didn't want to handle and I couldn't handle, and feelings of not good enough and jealousy and just not feeling like I fit in or whatever was going on. I always, one of my stories was I was a dancer, and to be in a leotard 3 times a week when I was the tallest, biggest one constantly was horrendous. Even though I love dancing, I was told at an early age that I was too big to be a dancer, like too tall, too big, too everything. And I took it as I'm not good enough in anything. And it was just a downward spiral. And what I say is I ended up getting a master's degree later in health and wellness coaching, focused nutrition. But what it could have been, my master's could have been in people pleasing, crappy self-esteem, and just feeling like shit, feeling horrible about myself. And that struggle, just because my story, thankfully, there wasn't outward abuse, but there was inward abuse, and that can be just as devastating. And so, I'll say it this way. It was about 15 years ago. I was married to somebody, a really good person. He's a great dad. I have 2 children with him. I think what happened was I got to a point where my overeating, my binging, my relationship with food and myself got so painful that I considered, it's about 2003, considered taking my life. And I realized that I had a choice. I could either go down that avenue, which of course would have ended everything, or I could get some help. And I started in a support group, and it just changed my life. I started to wake up. And what I realized is that what was missing was this connection to myself, this connection, this self-love, feeling compassion for myself, forgiveness. And as I started excavating me, that's when I started to realize some of the things that needed to shift in my own life. And so sadly or not sadly, you know, I realized I was not in a marriage that was the best fit for me. And happy to say today, he's remarried with 2 children. I'm remarried and with a stepdaughter. And my, you know, for me, it was doing that gracefully and amicably, but a lot of things shifted. I think the most important transformation was really learning to honor myself and seeing that in others, that we are, I believe, sacred and here for a reason. And I started to wake up to, okay, well, you know, what am I here for? What do I really want to do in this lifetime? I don't want to, for me, what, you know, what really gets me, Hector, is I don't want to get to, I hope 96, 100, wherever I am, and say, shoot, I missed it. I wish I had done X, Y, and Z. Like that drives me every day. So through all of that transformation, I always joke, 30 grand of therapy, you too can figure yourself out. Every personal development program. I mean, just I did a lot of self-work, thousands of hours. And that's a lot of what helped me to write my first book. I created something that I thought, okay, if I had had this 15 years earlier, this would have really, really helped me. And I just took all of the different learnings in my own experience and put it in a way that hopefully would help people to move through limited beliefs, feeling stuck, not good enough, and reconnect to who they really are. I found that as I do that, it's allowed me to step forward in a way that, you know, I think of myself as a vessel. I am here to be of service, to make a difference, to help others, and be a stand for living a powerful life. It's part of what I love about the idea and mission of One Life, and just really being a support and being here to hopefully uplift and share what's helped me. A little bit about my story.
It's so it's often overlooked, right? I think as I've kind of gotten into the space, I was fortunate enough to find kind of personal development and growth and the wonderful people of you know, One Life through entrepreneurship. And I think unfortunately some people, it needs to get to like a rock bottom place for them to wake up and kind of have that self-awareness. But I think the vast majority of people are hurting inside. They're you know, there's this pain that isn't really addressed with mental health and emotional well-being. So you've seen kind of the corporate side. Now you're working, you know, with individuals and coaching and speaking at lots of different places. So let's start with, like, to the person who goes, Julie, I don't have an issue. This is not a problem. Like, I'm fine, right? I think that maybe there's even a lack of awareness. So is there either a story or a time or a person that kind of comes to mind about them having that realization that they do need help, they do need to invest time, energy, attention into developing this part of themselves, whether it's self-doubt or self-worth or confidence? Does anything come to mind?
Oh my gosh, I have so many stories. I'm like, okay, which one do I draw from? And I'm thinking of 2. And I think it's important because they're both male, and not that it matters. I've had women in that space too. And there's something to understand. Look, there's this whole nature of readiness to change. There's like different stages. And so I am not I'm not out to change anyone. I like to share what's worked. I like to share principles and strategies and habits that can make a difference. I believe investing in yourself and self-awareness and focusing on strengths and personal growth is literally, and self-connection is the key to joy and happiness, satisfaction, abundance, success, the things that we're looking for. That's what I found in my life. So I'm not a big, like, you know, in someone's face. It's just not my style. However, I have 2 in mind. I worked with somebody, I coached him when I started. This is about 10 years ago. I've been coaching for about 10 years, but I ended up getting my master's degree in coaching about 7 years ago. And we had to do a practicum, and I worked with this client who was a VP at NASA. Okay. And his issue, awesome guy, super smart. I remember almost feeling like, you got to be kidding. His issue was around confidence. And I'm thinking, I don't get it. My head cannot comprehend that you're dealing with confidence. You're high up. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Right. So, and that's somebody I had the honor and privilege of getting to work with for a while. He has an entrepreneurial endeavor on the side. He still does things with NASA, but has moved. He's he's just living an amazing, amazing life. And it was him. He was ready. But we debunked that. We looked at that. We looked under the rock, a lot of energy. And there were stories there. There were limited beliefs. There were stories from childhood. There was a lot to look at. I'm different than a therapist. We don't hang in the past. I think therapy has its place. What I love about coaching is that it's very present, future focused. So we looked at what's not serving, what does we want to create. The thing is that we get to create anything we want. We really do. We really get to create our life. And that's part of why I call myself a life designer. I like helping people to design their life. You get to be in the driver's seat. That was one. I had an example though, Hector, this was recent within the year. This really, really touched me. I was, so I work with companies, I work with the government, I work with the military, and I do a lot of courses. I don't just do one-on-one coaching. I do courses as well on leadership, on mindset, on mindfulness. And I was at Pearl Harbor at a military base with about 25 leaders, some of them civilians, some of them high-ranking officials, military officials. And it was a 2-day leadership course, and we got to the topic around, I was talking about energy and managing your energy and being depleted and how that affects you. And I will just say this, it was so powerful. I had a couple of, 2 of the women and about 4 of the men came to me separately and just completely talked about how depleted they are, and that this course really shifted their belief and what they want to do to change. And it was so powerful. And we ended actually right outside looking at Pearl Harbor, all of us in a circle. I mean, there were like tears. I'm going back for a week to do a whole full week around these topics. It was that powerful. It wasn't me that was so powerful. It was that these students, these individuals were waking up to themselves, to awareness, to what's missing, to what they need to feel more energized and happy and whole. And so it was very cool, and it was a privilege to weave in things that they normally don't get in their training. So that was an example. And I've worked with many, many, many clients, coached many clients that I've just seen this shift, like the light goes on, literally a light bulb goes on. And it's just one of the most beautiful things, because when that happens, what happened in my life, you can't go back in a good way, which can also be a little like, whoa, like I'm awake. But that's what's caused so much transformation in my own life, and so much meaning and purpose and feeling of, waking up lit up every day to do what I do. So, it's an honor to see that. That's what I feel part of what I'm here to do, is help people really uncover who they are and to freaking thrive. I mean, I think we're all meant to thrive.
It's interesting that you bring up this kind of waking up, and I'd imagine that if they're high ranking and they're in the government, they're not in their 20s or maybe even in their 30s, or they obviously have some experience. But the reason I bring that up is I find that the previous generations, right, they came of a different, there's a different mindset, whether it's growth mindset, whether it's, I mean, we can go on about all the changes in beliefs and mindsets that have happened from the 1960s to today. But the point that I'm getting to is, you probably are someone who is so far on the other end of the spectrum than maybe the typical government employee who they show 9 to 5, they've told what to do. It's almost, I wouldn't call it a religion, but my mom worked for the city of LA for 35 years. And after a while, there is some doctrine that you are indoctrinated to by being in that culture for decades. And so I'm really, really curious what is necessary, and this is kind of a 2-part question, but what's necessary to break people out of that very rigid belief system of, this is how things work. I am, a static kind of, individual, to all of a sudden seeing growth. And then my next kind of thing that I wrote down is like, what are you trying to open their minds to? You just spat them off, and I don't even know what they were. I couldn't write them down, but you were like, limited beliefs, mine. And it was just like, these are the things, here's like the things that, like the foundation, I think, if you will. So what's that process like for waking up those people who are not woo-woo, who are not necessarily entrepreneurial, who are not who come from a very different kind of background? And then what else are you trying to wake them up to kind of get them through there?
These are great questions. Well, and let me say that, I'm a thoroughbred entrepreneur by heart and soul, meaning I don't think in a box. If you put me in a box, I will create a circle. I mean, I just don't, my brain doesn't think that way. I don't treat rules in the same way. This was like a learning for myself because I worked in corporate America 11 years. I was director of recruiting. I did leadership training, guest relations for a major successful restaurant chain. And I don't know how I missed it, but now 4 years in my own business, I'm like, wow, I don't even know how I did 9 to 5. So here's the thing I would say, and my sweet spot are people that are entrepreneurs and that want to live that kind of lifestyle and create. However, I see my purpose is here to serve and to help human beings, that anyone that I have the pleasure and the privilege to work with, to wake up to who they are. So for me, it's again, kind of what I said earlier. I don't ever go into any situation thinking like, I am here, I'm going to, make you do this, or let me say it this way. It's more of an intention. I believe that no matter where you're working, who you are, there is and this might sound more spiritual woo-woo, but there is a divine, sacred something about you. There's a light. There's an aspect to you that wants to be expressed, to be fully self-expressed. I believe we want to be thriving. We want to be expressed. We want to be successful. And my goal is to bring that out in whatever setting I am. And one of the things that I've loved about the challenge, it's been a good challenge, is when I go into a government or a military setting, that is the antithesis of where I would find myself. I could last not even a day. I mean, I'm also very visual, and there's not a lot of aesthetics in a military base. Now, that's not important there, and I get it. But my intention is to see each person as an individual that has a massive amount of talent and skill and ability to thrive. And so one of the ways I do that is focusing on strength, on what we call appreciative inquiry. I was trained as a coach in that. I've been trained in the LEAF model with John Berghoff around, looking at where are you thriving? Where are you strong? Where do you succeed? Because that gives energy. And I think it's based on energy. And when we feel depleted, it's harder to be successful. So it doesn't matter. You could be in the military position as a ranked general, which literally I was working with like 3rd and 4th in command, calling them by their first name, which I was told was okay. I don't know anyone else was doing that, but that's okay. The point was to see each person as an individual. And I think what really made a difference is that we're all human beings. I don't care where you are, what your rank is, what your position is, if you're in government or not, or you're entrepreneur or not, it doesn't matter. There's a general, I think, code that goes along with being human. And most of us struggle with worthiness, with, with limited beliefs, with putting a limit on ourselves, ceiling, with, I think, mastering our own thoughts, with energy, with mindset. So to me, it doesn't matter where I am. My aim is, though, to speak the language of wherever I am. So the way I would speak in a military setting, obviously sounded a little different than if I'm leading a women's retreat or an entrepreneurial setting. It's going to sound different, but the message is the same. And that's what matters.
Mm. Yeah, so important. I thought that it was really valuable just to highlight that kind of contrast. And you mentioned that your sweet spot is with entrepreneurs, and a lot of people in the One Life community are either entrepreneurs now or they're looking to make that jump from being from that corporate world, that 9 to 5, or the kind of cliche is getting out of the rat race. And you wrote a book called Get a PhD in You. And I mentioned at the beginning, but catch me up on there. Is there 2 versions, or is there a book and a workbook? I know you are up to a lot of stuff, so catch us up on what's going on with the book, and then let's dive into, I love the title because it's such a great title, of what actually getting a PhD in you means.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to sort this in my head because there's a couple stories I think that will help illustrate. So yeah, it's become kind of it's got a family, right? So I have the Get a PhD in You. That's a course in miraculous self-discovery, and it is about self-discovery and living your best life. And I guide people really in an interactive way how to do that. And I created a companion journal that goes with it, and it has more prompts and questions. I love open-ended, appreciative-based questions. I just think when you start asking new questions, you get new results. That's transformed my life. So that kind of goes with the first book. And then I realized, all right, I feel like when I go into a setting like, a company like Under Armour or Morgan Stanley or Pandora Jewelers or the military, my first book, it could work, but it doesn't always translate. I love my first book, and it's not just for women, but it does have a pink cover. It has, sparkles on the inside, and it's got a certain feel to it. And I thought, you know what? I am teaching the same thing.
I think there's a wand in there with a star on it too. I think
there's a wand with a star. So yeah, it definitely has a certain population it's going to target. That's a whole other conversation we can get into. When I was told by one of the best writers out there, he's like, this is for women, or this is for like spiritual women. And I said, okay, I got it. You're right. And I realized, but what bothered me was that I'm teaching the same material. And I want to be able to teach this in the similar way, because I believe in the concept that when you investigate and you research yourself, like a scientist, when you start to, and really put that time, energy, resources, your focus on you and what's working, what's not, and what's serving. I mean, it changed my whole trajectory of my life. Literally everything in my life has amplified for the better. And so by doing this work, and so I thought, okay, I've got to be able to write this for businesses, for teams, for companies. So I could go in and say, okay, here's my book and you can use this, and I don't have to worry about sparkles and a wand. And so it got a little bit of a, a business facelift. I just wrote it with that in mind. And it's a new book. It's actually, there's new concepts in it. There is a whole piece on managing your energy, which is something I think is important. I wrote it specifically for groups and teams, entrepreneurs, businesses. So it starts at the individual level, but you could come together as a group and use it. And then also what I have is a bonus chapter, which I'm super psyched about. John Berghoff, who started the Flourishing Leadership Institute and is like incredible at using appreciative inquiry, he wrote a chapter about using this book at the scale of all. How do you use this with systems? Because when you look at a strength-based approach, so we tend to look at what didn't work, how we sucked at this, where we are not doing well, and that drains you of energy. It doesn't have you focus in your zone as genius, versus when you look at your strengths, like a strength-based approach, it changes the game. And so this book has a full-on, as does the first, strength-based framework and approach. And I designed it so that I could go into the military. I could go into, I have a company I work with that's a huge builders company. I could go anywhere with it. And so I wanted to write it so it would translate, the language and the feel would translate. And so that's Get a PhD in You Business Edition. And it's just funny. I already have like some other ideas of what's coming next, but I've just told my creative self to just hold on, because I'm like trying to keep up with the creativity that's flowing through me, not me, but like literally whatever is around me is just flowing through me. I'm like, just pause. I need to wait and get this book out, and then we'll write the next one. So, what came out of this, though, it's interesting. You mentioned this earlier, is an obsession of mine is helping entrepreneurs, especially women that are looking to monetize their purpose and to really take their calling and to apply that. And whether it's a side hustle or a full-time living, to really do that. And so I started a program just recently called Monetize Your Purpose. And I'm doing a group coaching program. And it's been awesome. I mean, it's like sharing what I've learned, but really doing a lot of the inner work, because that's typically what's missed, is the inner beliefs, the inner stuff. That's what I'm really in love with. I mean, I love the strategy and how do you get out there, but I also love like just really looking at your inner world and creating that to support you. So that's kind of coming out of all of this work too. It's just been very cool to see. I love seeing others thrive. I guess I believe on a higher existential level that as we each thrive, that shifts how we feel about ourselves, how we are and interact with others. And I do believe that could really change how our world operates, one thriving person at a time. So for me, I see it as my service to the world. It starts with you, it starts with me. but that's not where you stop. You go from there and then you become a contagious thriver. So that's part of what I'm here to do.
It's very, I think it's so cool that you are shifting. The book part is really cool. That I would say that it got a little edge, right? I mean, the second edition got a little edge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how cool now that people have that opportunity to monetize their purpose, to you know, what I would call a profitable purpose. So what is the inner work as we're kind of, you know, rounding our way towards the end of this conversation? I always like to give people with like, okay, now what? Or, you know, I think you've sold people, at least if they've been listening with a half an ear, they at least get it, that there's some inner work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So when they wake up throughout the day, when they're dealing with these anxieties about, am I good enough to start a business? When they're dealing with these doubts of, you know, what about confidence or whatever it is, what are some practical exercises, techniques, things that you kind of would prescribe to someone to improve this part of their mindset or beliefs?
I think that's such a beautiful and important question. And it's something that I work on every single day. And I had a group, 9 incredible women today, talking about this, the inner practice, the inner business. To me, the inner business is the most important thing you can do, because your inner, I believe, your outer reflects what's going on in your inner, on the inside. So for me, one of the most important things, hands down, is meditation, getting quiet. One of my dreams actually was to share meditations that I had started doing with myself, and it's a gift today. And I'm just sharing these meditations are free. If you go to the app Insight Timer, it's a free app. It's incredible. They have 4 million users from all over the world. You can see who you're meditating with, and you can start with like 0 to 1 minutes up to like an hour and a half, anything in between, all different topics. And I've been really blessed to have about 10 of them up there. And it's not just mine. I mean, there are thousands of teachers up there with meditation. So for me, meditation, starting the day, you know, I'm a big Miracle Morning fan. We love Hal Elrod in his book. And so having a routine, I don't always do all 6 like in a row, but for me, it's non-negotiable to meditate and get quiet. And I will tell you, Hector, some days, for me, ideally it's 20 to 30 minutes, because my brain just goes at a million miles an hour. However, I have 2 children, got to get them to school. I don't always wake up on time. And so it's a minute, and that's fine. So I think that has definitely been a game changer. Another one for me, you know, is learning to have, to be more aware, more awake in the moment, to have compassion. I think we all have an inner critic, whatever you want to call it, a saboteur, a voice, something that can kind of get in the way and say crappy things to yourself. You know, there's something like 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day that we have, according to, I believe it was UCLA study of mind, of doing imaging. And so, you know, average 70,000 thoughts a day, that's a lot of thoughts. A lot of those are not so kind. So I have a practice. It's really simple. For me, it works. I put my hand on my heart and I just take a deep breath and try to reconnect to, you know, literally the source of our life. It's right here. And that helps me to kind of ground myself. So that's a practice I use. The third, I would say, if we're going to give 3, is what I call like rapid fire appreciation. This is a great game changer. You could do a minute or 2. It's all you need. You can do it with a friend. You can leave a message for somebody. I do this all the time. I have a couple friends and they know, like, oh, there's Julie, there's her rapid fire appreciation. Or you could do it for yourself. Do it out loud. Tell your cat, tell your dog, it doesn't matter. But you know, to reframe right then and there, you time yourself. I like to do 2 minutes. It goes by really fast. Anything and everything that I can appreciate right now, grateful for in my life, anything. It's crazy awesome how it just reshifts your brain. And that, you know, this is nothing completely new. I've learned this from other major teachers and I'm grateful. When the goal is to remember to do it. So I would say, make notes to yourself. I have, you can't see it, but on my mirrors, I have like notes and words and quotes. I have things in my calendar to remind me. I have words on my rear view mirror. I mean, I just try to remind myself to be loving, to be kind, to be humble, to be awake, to be aware. So those 3, meditation, absolutely. Hand to heart is a good one, or just hand on your stomach, or, you know, something tactile. You could put your hand on your head, like remind yourself your head needs to just kind of slow down. And appreciation, rampage, rapid fire appreciation.
What I love is that they're so practical. Very just much things that, like you said, you didn't say it, but in the back of my head, I heard myself saying it. There's no excuses. Like there's no reason to not do it. That's the second thing that I heard coming around.
Don't get upset with yourself if you don't do it. See, that's the thing. If you don't do it, then you can't be beating yourself up, because that's when for me, that's when I get in that spiral. So that you just gotta love and honor where you're at the best you can.
Yeah, I like I don't know who I heard it, and I may have heard it at a One Life conference, is the positive spiral, right? Just a lot of people go into the negative what if, the negative spiral, and they go, well, what if, and then they think worst case scenario, and then they go, what if that, and then it keeps going down and down and down, whereas if it takes effort, you have to consciously do it, but you can do that positive spiral where it's like, well, what is the best case scenario, and then what, and then what's best case scenario from there, and that obviously is much more protective. It's much more better. All of it.
Can I add one quick thing to that, Hector? Yeah. Really quick. The thing to notice is your energy, right? Because with all that information, if your energy is high and feels good, then go there. When you start going into that spiral of negativity, usually it's zapping. So like even you just doing a second of, oh, what if that, and that good thing, it's like, notice if that's, you've got to pay attention to your body. If you're feeling more energized, that's a good indication to hang out there more. Just a thought.
This has been such a great interview, conversation, and the challenge that I always have as an interviewer is if we don't keep it nice and tight, then we could be here for 4 hours talking about the moon, or talking about how the retrograde's finally over, or who knows what we do.
Right. Totally with you. I understand. No.
Julie, but what I love about you and I've kind of been. I remember that conversation when that one of that author mentioned that about that book. I was in the room when he said that, and to see what you have done, and I can only imagine being the subject of that criticism, if we want to call it that, right? But it was so constructive, because I remember that specific moment, and it stood out for me. And the reason I say that is to see where you've gone since that moment, and what you've been able to accomplish, the people you've been able to impact, and it's just been a real pleasure for me to kind of witness alongside, because you have such a valuable message to share with people. So I want to give you kudos, or internet claps, or whatever, just in kind of seeing that from the sidelines. It's been great to see.
Thank you. That was such a gift, that experience. It was a beautiful gift. I actually thanked him, and I went and shifted my cover, and it was a gift because I got clarity, like, oh, you're right. I can't be there for all people. This is a book for spiritual women, is kind of what he said. And now I remember that, but thank you for what you said. I took it as a serious gift, and I'm grateful that I got to have that experience. I wouldn't have, who knows if I'd be where I am today. I don't know.
So where can they find the book? Where's the best place to find the book?
So the book is launching shortly, October 8th, and it'll be on Amazon. Both
very cool.
Paperback, digital, and audio, all three.
I love it. And for you, if they want to connect with you or follow you on social media, or where's just kind of the best place to connect more with you?
Super easy. Everything is my name, which is Julie Reisler, and it's REI, like the store, SLER.com. So juliereisler.com, or everything. If you look up my name, you'll find me Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And the link to my new book is juliereisler.com/new book. Pretty easy.
We will get all those linked up and sent out as well. Thanks again, Julie. This has been so valuable as well. And guys, if you guys are catching this, feel free to ask any questions in the Mighty Networks community. That's where we'll be posting all of our podcasts. You can also get the One Life roadmap for for free. Our wonderful founder, Tim, has made that available. So you just join, and it's available for a limited time there. So go and get in there and go follow Julie on all the medias of the socials. Later this week, we have Norma LaFonte, who actually wrote a book called Money Monster. It's actually for parents who want to teach their kids about money. So that will be a very, very valuable conversation later this week as well. So make sure you tune in for that, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thank you.
We're done. We're not streaming, and